Mr. Parker. I'm sorry. The card has been declined. The wedding manager didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The orchestra had already stopped playing. The last notes of the romantic song disappeared beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Aurelia Grand Hotel, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than any accusation. 300 guests were standing around the ballroom, waiting, watching. And at the center of everything was Ethan Parker, my former husband. He stood beside a 7-tier wedding cake decorated with thousands of fresh white roses, his hand still resting on the shoulder of the woman he had chosen over me. Behind him, a massive screen continued playing their wedding slideshow. Ethan and Vanessa Reed laughing on a private beach. Ethan and Vanessa holding hands beneath a sunset. Ethan kissing Vanessa's forehead outside a luxury hotel. Every photo told the same story. A perfect love story. A second chance. A man who finally found the right woman. At least, that was the story they wanted everyone here to believe. The reality was much less beautiful. The reality was that the man standing under those golden lights was trying to pay for his new wife's wedding with a credit card that belonged to me. Try again. Ethan's voice was calm. Almost. Anyone else in the room probably wouldn't have noticed the tension in his jaw. But I did. I had spent 6 years married to him. I knew every small sign. The way his fingers tightened when he was nervous. The way he looked slightly to the left when he was trying to hide panic. The way he lowered his voice when he wanted people to believe he was still in control. The hotel employee nodded politely. Of course. Mr. Parker. She inserted the black card into the payment terminal again. The ballroom waited. The machine processed. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then, declined. A few conversations started immediately. Not loud. Not yet. But enough. A woman near the champagne tower leaned toward her husband. Did she say declined? Someone behind them whispered, maybe the machine is broken. Another guest glanced toward the wedding stage. They spent that much money and didn't pay. Ethan reached out and took the card. That's impossible. His smile was gone now. This card works. The hotel manager stepped forward. His expression remained professional. He had probably handled angry billionaires before. People who yelled. People who threatened lawsuits. People who believed money could fix every problem. Mr. Parker. The manager glanced at the tablet in his hand. I'm afraid this is not a problem with the card terminal. Ethan stared at him. Then what is the problem? The manager paused for half a second. Then said, the account connected to this card has been permanently closed. The words landed harder than anyone expected. For a moment, Ethan didn't move. Neither did Vanessa. She was standing beside him in a custom-made wedding gown. $20,000. Hand-sewn lace. A diamond necklace around her neck. A dress designed to make every woman in the room look twice. But at that moment, none of those things mattered. Because her face had changed. She wasn't the glowing bride from 5 minutes ago. She was a woman realizing something had gone terribly wrong. Closed. Vanessa repeated softly. The manager nodded. Yes. Ma'am. Ethan looked back at the card. Then at the manager. When? The manager checked the information. The account closure was processed 3 months ago. 3 months. Exactly. The same amount of time since our divorce became official. Ethan's fingers tightened around the card. No. His voice was quieter now. No. That's not possible. The manager looked at him. Mr. Parker. According to our records, this card was attached to an account owned by another person. The ballroom became completely silent. I sat in the back row. Away from the stage. Away from the cameras. Away from the people who wanted to celebrate Ethan and Vanessa's new beginning. My black dress was simple. Nothing like Vanessa's expensive gown. In front of me was a glass of sparkling water that I hadn't touched. I had been sitting there for almost 2 hours. Watching. Listening. Remembering. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not because I wasn't invited. Because I was. That was the strange part. They had sent me an invitation. An elegant ivory card with gold lettering. The kind of invitation people send when they want to appear generous. When they want everyone to know they are mature. When they want to prove they have moved on. The message from Vanessa had been handwritten. Asterisk, some people spend their whole lives holding on to anger. I hope you can find peace and wish us happiness. Asterisk, Ethan's message arrived the next morning. Asterisk, Claire. We both deserve a fresh start. I hope you can be mature enough to accept that. Accept. That word stayed in my mind. As if I was the problem. As if I was the one who had betrayed someone. As if I was the one who had moved on too quickly. So I came. Not because I wanted Ethan back. Not because I wanted revenge. I came because I wanted to see something. I wanted to know what would happen when. For once. I stopped fixing everything. For 6 years, I had been the person who fixed everything. And tonight was the first night I didn't. The first night Ethan had to face a problem without me. That was why I stayed. That was why I watched. And now, he finally looked at me. Across 300 guests. Across the flowers. Across the wedding cake. Across the life he had built after leaving me. His eyes found mine. For a second. He looked confused. Then he understood. His expression changed. Shock. Then anger. Then embarrassment. Claire. My name left his mouth like an accusation. The entire room followed his gaze. Everyone turned toward me. The abandoned wife. The ex-wife sitting alone. The woman whose account had just collapsed the perfect wedding. Ethan walked toward me. Slowly. But I could see the anger beneath his controlled expression. He stopped beside my table. What did you do? I looked up at him. What are you talking about? He placed the black card on my table. Hard. You closed the account. The people nearby stopped pretending not to listen. I looked at the card. Then back at him. Ethan. My voice was calm. We have been divorced for 3 months. His face tightened. So. I almost smiled. So. I repeated. You're asking me why your ex-wife stopped paying for your expenses. A few people gasped. The word spread. Ex-wife. Someone whispered it. Another person looked toward Vanessa. And suddenly the beautiful wedding story started showing cracks. Ethan lowered his voice. You knew this would happen. Yes. I looked at him. I knew. His eyes narrowed. Then you did this deliberately. No. I shook my head. I didn't ruin your wedding. Ethan. I looked around the ballroom. The flowers. The champagne. The luxury decorations. The expensive upgrades. I just stopped paying for it. Ethan stared at me. For a few seconds. He looked like he didn't understand the meaning behind my words. Then his expression changed. You're serious? I didn't answer. Because there was nothing left to explain. But Ethan had never been good at accepting silence. Especially when silence came from someone he once believed would always answer him. You're really doing this now? His voice became sharper. In front of everyone. I looked around. The guests who had been smiling 20 minutes ago were now watching us. His business partners. His relatives. Vanessa's family. Everyone was waiting for someone to explain why the perfect wedding had suddenly turned into a disaster. And Ethan wanted that explanation to be me. You're making this about revenge. He lowered his voice. But this isn't just about you and me. I almost laughed. Because that was exactly what Ethan always did. He made every consequence bigger than the mistake that caused it. He never said I spent money I couldn't afford. He said you're embarrassing me. He never said I betrayed your trust. He said you made me feel ignored. He never said I used your account after our divorce. He said you're ruining my wedding. You invited 300 people here. I said quietly. You signed the contract. You upgraded everything. You promised the hotel you would pay. My eyes moved toward the wedding stage. The flowers. The lights. The giant screen showing their photos. All of this was your choice. Ethan's face tightened. You knew the card was going to fail. Yes. The answer shocked him. Maybe he expected me to deny it. Maybe he expected me to apologize. Maybe he expected me to do what I had done for 6 years. Fix it. Explain it. Protect him. But I didn't. I knew. The anger in his eyes became obvious. Then you came here just to watch me fail. No. I looked at him. I came here because you invited me. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Because that was the truth. He had wanted me here. Not physically. Emotionally. He wanted me sitting in the corner as proof that he had won. He wanted his family to see that he had moved on. He wanted Vanessa to feel like she had replaced me. He wanted the world to see him standing beside a younger, prettier woman while his successful ex-wife sat alone. But he never imagined the woman sitting quietly in the corner would be the only person in the room who knew exactly what was happening. Vanessa finally reached us. Her wedding dress moved across the floor like a white wave. 3 hours ago, everyone had looked at her with admiration. Now everyone looked at her with curiosity. She stopped beside Ethan. Claire. Her voice was soft. Too soft. I knew that tone. Vanessa had always known how to sound hurt without looking aggressive. She could turn any situation into one where people felt sorry for her. I don't understand. She looked at the card. Then at me. If this account belonged to you, why didn't you tell Ethan before today? There it was. The question she wanted everyone to hear. Not asterisk why did Ethan use your account? Asterisk not asterisk why was a married man paying for my wedding with his ex-wife's money? Asterisk no. Her question was asterisk why didn't Claire warn us? Asterisk I looked at her. Why would I? Her expression froze. What? I said. Why would I? I leaned back slightly. Vanessa. We have been divorced for 3 months. I paused. Ethan is no longer my husband. The room became quieter. And you are no longer my friend. Her face changed. Only for a second. But I saw it. That small flash of anger behind her sadness. Most people wouldn't notice. I did. Because I used to know her. Before tonight. Vanessa Reed was the woman who knew everything about me. She knew my coffee order. She knew my mother's birthday. She knew which perfume Ethan liked. She knew which restaurants we went to for anniversaries. She knew every weakness in my marriage. And she used every single piece of that information. I never wanted things to become like this. Her voice trembled. I looked at her. You're right. She seemed surprised. You didn't want things to become like this. I glanced at Ethan. You wanted things to become exactly like this. Neither of them spoke. Because they knew. They knew what everyone in the room was beginning to understand. This wasn't a random financial mistake. This wasn't a technical problem. This wasn't bad timing. This was a man who built a new life using pieces stolen from his old one. And the bill had finally arrived. The hotel manager approached again. Mr. Parker. Ethan turned around. The man handed him a tablet. I need to discuss the remaining balance. Ethan forced himself to breathe. How much time do I have? The manager checked the screen. The upgraded services were scheduled to continue after the cake ceremony. He looked at the numbers. The remaining amount is $96,400. A wave of whispers moved through the ballroom. $96,400. For most people, it was impossible. For Ethan, it was supposed to be nothing. At least that was what he wanted everyone to believe. He had spent the last 2 years presenting himself as a successful entrepreneur. Magazine interviews, business conferences, luxury cars, private clubs. He wanted everyone to believe he had built an empire. But I knew the truth. I knew because I was there when there was nothing. I knew because I watched him build his company from a tiny rented office. I knew because I paid the first employee's salaries when his investors pulled out. I knew because I signed documents guaranteeing loans when banks refused to trust him. I knew because the successful man everyone admired was standing on a foundation I helped create. But nobody knew that. Because Ethan never told that story. He told another one. The one where he was the ambitious businessman. The one where he fought against impossible odds. The one where he succeeded because he was talented. I never needed credit. That was my mistake. I thought love meant building something together. I thought if one person became stronger, both people won. I didn't realize some people only love what you provide. Not who you are. Claire. Ethan's voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up. His anger had changed. Now there was something else. Something familiar. Desperation. You can't seriously let this happen. There it was. The sentence I expected. Not asterisk I'm sorry. Asterisk not asterisk I made a mistake. Asterisk not asterisk I shouldn't have used your account. Asterisk only asterisk you can't let this happen. Asterisk as if his choices were still my responsibility. I looked at him. Why not? He stared at me. Because, he stopped. Because there was no good answer. Because the real answer was asterisk because you always save me. Asterisk but he couldn't say that. Not in front of everyone. So he changed his approach. You're angry. I almost smiled. Am I? Yes. He nodded. You're hurt. I understand. I watched him carefully. Ethan always became calm when he needed something. When people are emotional, they do things they regret. I looked at him. You're giving me advice about emotional decisions. His face darkened. Claire. No. My voice stayed quiet. You don't get to do that. The ballroom was silent. You don't get to betray me and then teach me how to react. A few guests looked away. Ethan's mother lowered her eyes. Vanessa's fingers tightened around her bouquet. For the first time tonight, they weren't looking at me like the angry ex-wife. They were looking at Ethan. And that was the moment he realized something. The story was changing. For 6 months, he had controlled the narrative. He told people our marriage ended because I was distant. Because I cared more about my company. Because I was too focused on success. He told people Vanessa came into his life after we were already finished. He told people he was finally happy. But now, standing in front of 300 witnesses, his perfect story had one problem. The person he blamed was standing right there. And she was no longer protecting him. Ethan looked at me for a long time. A strange thing happened in that moment. For the first time in years, I saw him not as my husband. Not as the man I once loved. Not as the person I had spent 6 years trying to understand. I saw him as everyone else saw him. A man standing in the middle of his own wedding reception. Unable to pay for the life he had promised another woman. And somehow, he still thought I was the problem. You know what this looks like. Right. His voice dropped. Only I could hear him now. You're making me look like a failure. I stared at him. The sentence was so familiar that it almost felt comforting. Almost. Because this was Ethan. Whenever something went wrong, he never asked asterisk what did I do. Asterisk he always asked asterisk why are you making me feel this way. Asterisk I remembered the first time I noticed it. 6 years ago. Before the money. Before the company. Before Vanessa. Before I learned that some people could accept your love while quietly preparing to leave you. I met Ethan Parker at a charity event in downtown Chicago. At that time, I was 29 years old. My consulting company was still small. Not unsuccessful. But not the kind of company people wrote articles about. I worked 16-hour days. I answered emails at midnight. I negotiated contracts over coffee because I couldn't afford expensive lunches. I was ambitious. Focused. Exhausted. Then Ethan walked into my life. He was different from the men I usually met. Most people saw my success first. They saw the company. The money. The connections. They either wanted something from me or felt intimidated by me. Ethan didn't. At least, that was what I believed. He asked me questions. Real questions. Not, how much revenue did your company make? Not, who are your biggest clients? He asked, why did you start your business? I remember laughing. No one usually asks that. Then everyone is asking the wrong questions. That was Ethan. Confident. Warm. Charming. The kind of person who made you feel like you were the only person in the room. 3 months later. He remembered that I hated overly sweet coffee. 5 months later. He drove through a snowstorm because I had a fever and forgot to pick up medicine. 8 months later. He proposed. And I said yes. Because I believed I had found someone who saw me. Not my success. Not my money. Me. That was the woman I used to be. The woman who believed love could fix anything. Claire. Ethan's voice pulled me back. The ballroom returned. The wedding. The guests. The disaster. You're thinking about the past. I looked at him. You're right. His expression softened slightly. Maybe he thought he had found an opening. I know this hurts. No. I shook my head. You don't. His face changed. You don't know what hurts me anymore. Ethan. The word surprised even me. Because they were true. 4 months after our divorce. I had tried to explain my pain. I wrote messages I never sent. I rehearsed conversations in my head. I imagined him finally understanding. Finally saying asterisk I'm sorry. Asterisk but eventually. I realized something. Some people don't fail to understand your pain. They understand it perfectly. They just don't value it enough to change. The hotel manager cleared his throat. Mr. Parker. I do need a decision. Ethan looked irritated. This can be handled. The manager nodded politely. I'm sure it can. But everyone heard the meaning. The hotel was not interested in confidence. It needed payment. Ethan looked around. His father. His business partners. His friends. People who came here expecting to celebrate him. Not rescue him. Finally. His eyes returned to me. Claire. That tone. I knew it. The tone he used when he needed something. When we were married. We shared everything. I almost laughed. Because that was the argument he chose. Marriage. The same marriage he had abandoned. The same marriage he claimed was already dead when Vanessa appeared. You're right. I nodded. We shared everything. His eyes showed a small amount of hope. Then I continued. Except loyalty. The hope disappeared. Vanessa stepped forward. Claire. Enough. Her voice was still gentle. But there was tension beneath it. You're angry at Ethan. I understand. She placed one hand on Ethan's arm. A small gesture. A public statement. He made mistakes. Mistakes. That word. I looked at her. Is that what you call it? She avoided my eyes. Claire, no. I looked around. I want to understand. My voice remained calm. You knew about the account. Vanessa froze. What? You knew Ethan was using my card. Her expression changed. Only slightly. But enough. No. She answered too quickly. I didn't. I studied her. Vanessa had always been good at acting innocent. That was one of the reasons Ethan liked her. She made him feel admired. Important. Powerful. Everything he felt he lost when standing beside me. You never asked him how he was paying for this wedding. She looked hurt. Of course I did. And what did he say? Silence. A dangerous silence. Because everyone was waiting. Vanessa looked at Ethan. Just for a second. But that second was enough. She didn't look at him like a wife looking at her husband. She looked at him like someone looking for an answer. A way out. And I saw it. The first crack. The perfect couple everyone admired, was not as perfect as they wanted people to believe. Claire. Ethan's voice became colder. You're enjoying this. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Not because I believed him. Because I remembered how many times I had believed him before. The night his company almost collapsed. He told me I was making him feel inadequate. The day I questioned his spending. He told me I didn't believe in him. The night I discovered the messages between him and Vanessa. He told me I had pushed him away. Every time. Every single time. The person who caused the wound somehow became the victim. I looked at him. No. Ethan. I stood up slowly. I'm not enjoying this. I picked up my purse. I'm just finally watching you deal with something without me. His face changed. Because he knew. That was the truth he feared most. Not losing the money. Not embarrassing himself. Not even losing Vanessa. The thing Ethan feared was losing the person who always came running when he called. The person who solved problems before he even noticed them. Me. 3 months earlier. When our divorce was finalized. Ethan said something I would never forget. We were standing outside the courthouse. Rain was falling. He looked exhausted. But not broken. Not yet. You'll regret this. I had looked at him. Regret what? Letting 6 years disappear. At that time. I almost answered. Almost told him that I didn't want 6 years to disappear. I wanted those 6 years to mean something. I wanted him to fight. I wanted him to choose me. But instead. I said, no. He looked surprised. No. I shook my head. I regret waiting 6 years. That was the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Because Ethan always believed I would stay. Even after the betrayal. Even after the divorce. Somewhere deep inside. He still believed there would be a moment when I softened. When I forgave. When I saved him again. Tonight was that moment. Except I didn't. The hotel manager returned. Mr. Parker. Ethan turned. The account issue has not been resolved. A pause. If payment cannot be provided within the next 20 minutes. The hotel will have to cancel the additional services. Vanessa's face changed. What does that mean? The manager answered professionally. The upgraded bar service. The private dining extension. The additional guest suites. The midnight seafood reception. The honeymoon preparation package. Every item was something they added. Something they wanted. Something they assumed someone else would pay for. Vanessa looked at Ethan. You said everything was handled. Ethan didn't answer. And that silence told everyone enough. I watched them. The man I once loved. The woman I once trusted. standing beneath thousands of white roses, surrounded by people who came to celebrate their happiness. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger. No jealousy. No sadness. Only clarity. Because the truth was finally simple. I didn't destroy their wedding. I didn't ruin their future. I didn't take anything away. I simply removed the one thing they had always counted on. Me. Ethan stared at me. For a few seconds. I thought he might finally understand. Understand that this was never about a $96,400 wedding bill. It was never about a credit card. It was never about tonight. Tonight was simply the first time the consequences reached him before I could step in and erase them. But then he did what he always did. He looked for someone else to blame. You planned this. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The accusation alone was enough. A few guests turned toward me again. I almost admired how quickly he could change the atmosphere. 6 years of marriage had taught him exactly how to make people question me. You knew this would happen. He continued. You knew the card would be rejected. And you still came here. I looked at him. Why does that surprise you? His eyebrows tightened. What does that mean? It means you know exactly why. I glanced at the wedding stage. The giant screen behind him was still frozen on a picture of him and Vanessa smiling beside a private villa in Italy. A picture from their first vacation together. A vacation they took while I was in Boston attending a business conference. At the time, I thought Ethan was working late. I thought Vanessa was helping him with business contacts. I thought I was lucky. My husband and my best friend got along. I didn't realize I was the only person in the room who believed that friendship meant loyalty. You didn't forget about the account. I said. Ethan's expression shifted. You knew. The ballroom became quieter. You knew that account existed. He looked away. Only for a second. But everyone saw it. You knew who owned it. Silence. And you knew you were still an authorized user. The guests started whispering again. Authorized user. Those 2 words changed everything. Because suddenly this was no longer a misunderstanding. It wasn't a husband accidentally using the wrong card. It was a man who had access to something that belonged to someone else. And he expected that access to continue forever. The first person to understand was probably Ethan's father. Robert Parker had spent his entire career building a reputation as an honest businessman. He was old-fashioned. The kind of man who believed a handshake still meant something. He looked at Ethan. You told me the wedding was fully paid. Ethan turned. Dad, was it? His voice wasn't angry. That made it worse. It was disappointment. And Ethan hated disappointment more than anger. I was handling it. Robert looked around the ballroom. At this moment, Ethan didn't answer. His father slowly shook his head. For the first time that night, I saw Ethan look small. Not because of the money. Because someone he respected had stopped believing him. Vanessa noticed it too. She stepped closer to Ethan. We need to talk. Her voice was low. But I was close enough to hear. Ethan looked at her. Not now. Not now. A flash of panic appeared on her face. Ethan. You told me everything was taken care of. I said I was handling it. That's not the same thing. Interesting. A few months ago. She had no problem defending him. Tonight. When the problem affected her dream wedding, the difference suddenly mattered. I watched quietly. People always revealed themselves when things stopped going their way. The hotel manager returned with the payment tablet. Mr. Parker. Ethan turned. We need confirmation of payment within 15 minutes. 15. Yes. The manager remained polite. If payment cannot be processed, the hotel will continue with the services already covered by your existing payments. And the upgrades. They will be removed. Vanessa's face went pale. The upgrades. The manager nodded. The upgraded floral arrangements. Premium bar package. Private dining extension. Additional suites. And late-night catering. The woman who had spent months planning this wedding suddenly looked like she was losing pieces of her identity. Because Vanessa didn't just want a wedding. She wanted a statement. She wanted everyone to see that she had one. That she was the woman Ethan chose. That she was the woman worth spending money on. She wanted the flowers. The diamonds. The luxury. The photographs. She wanted my old life. But better. And now someone had taken away the stage. Claire. I turned. It was Olivia Grant. One of Ethan's college friends. She had been sitting at the table near mine the entire night. Unlike most people here. She wasn't pretending not to notice. I didn't know. Her voice was quiet. I looked at her. About the card. She shook her head. About everything. There was guilt in her eyes. What did he tell everyone? I already knew. But I wanted to hear it. Olivia hesitated. He said you two had been unhappy for a long time. I smiled slightly. Of course. He said you were focused on your company. I nodded. Anne. He said Vanessa came into his life after the marriage was already over. That one almost made me laugh. Almost. Because that was the easiest lie. The one people wanted to believe. Nobody wanted to admit a happy marriage could hide betrayal. Nobody wanted to believe someone they knew could do something cruel. So they accepted the simpler story. The marriage was already broken. The new relationship was just a coincidence. Except it wasn't. I remembered the day I found out. Not the day Ethan admitted it. He never admitted it. I discovered it myself. It was a Tuesday. A completely ordinary Tuesday. That was the cruelest part. Life-changing moments rarely arrive with warnings. No dramatic music. No storm outside. No sign telling you asterisk your world is about to change. Asterisk I had returned home early from a business trip. I wanted to surprise Ethan. I had bought his favorite cheesecake from a bakery near the airport. He loved that cheesecake. Every anniversary. Every birthday. Every difficult week. I used to buy it when I wanted to remind him I'm still here. I walked into the house. The lights were on. There were shoes near the entrance. A pair of women's heels. I recognized them immediately. Because I had helped Vanessa choose them. I stood there for several seconds. Holding the cake box. Not moving. Not breathing. Then I heard voices. From our bedroom. Ethan's voice. Vanessa's voice. Two people I trusted more than anyone. I didn't scream. I didn't open the door. I didn't throw the cake. I just stood there. And listened. That was the moment my marriage ended. Not when Ethan signed divorce papers. Not when he moved out. Not when he married Vanessa. It ended in that hallway. With a cheesecake slowly getting warm in my hand. Claire. Olivia's voice brought me back. You okay? I looked at her. Yes. And surprisingly, I meant it. Because months ago, remembering that moment would have destroyed me. Tonight, it only reminded me why I was sitting here. Why I didn't warn Ethan. Why I didn't rescue him. Why I didn't make one phone call. Because I had already spent years saving someone who never intended to save me. Ethan finally walked back toward me. But this time, his expression had changed. The anger was gone. Now he looked desperate. Claire. I looked at him. Please. That word. Please. The word I had heard hundreds of times. When his company needed money. When his confidence disappeared. When he made mistakes. When he needed me. He always knew exactly when to say it. I know you're hurt. I didn't respond. But this isn't the time. I almost smiled. Not the time. Interesting. There was always a reason my feelings had to wait. Not now. Not today. Not during a business deal. Not before an important meeting. Not before a public event. My pain was always inconvenient. His problems were always urgent. Claire. He lowered his voice. Help me. There it was. The sentence I expected. The sentence that once would have worked. The sentence that had controlled my entire marriage. Help me. I looked at him. The man I had loved. The man I had defended. The man I had built up. And I realized something. I wasn't angry because he needed help. I was angry because he still believed I would give it. I already helped you. My voice was calm. For 6 years. His face changed. And tonight. I picked up my purse. Tonight. I'm helping myself. The room went silent. Ethan stared at me. Vanessa stared at me. Everyone stared at me. Because they finally understood. The woman who had always stayed, was leaving. But they still didn't know the biggest secret. They thought tonight was about a failed payment. They thought this was the end of Ethan's embarrassment. They were wrong. The credit card was only the beginning. Because 3 weeks before this wedding, I discovered something much worse. Something that would destroy more than a wedding. It would destroy Ethan Parker's entire empire. The first thing I noticed after walking away from Ethan was how light I felt. Not happy. Not relieved. Just, lighter. For 6 years. I had carried a responsibility that was never really mine. Ethan's company. Ethan's reputation. Ethan's confidence. Ethan's mistakes. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being his wife and became the person responsible for keeping his life from collapsing. And the strangest part was, I didn't realize it was happening. Not until I stopped. Not until I watched him stand in front of 300 people and realized that nobody was coming to save him. Especially not me. I walked toward the exit of the ballroom. The crystal lights above me reflected against the marble floor. A few guests stepped aside. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked curious. Some looked at me like I was the villain. I knew that would happen. People always preferred simple stories. The abandoned wife. The jealous ex. The woman who ruined a wedding. Nobody wanted the complicated version. Nobody wanted to know that before Ethan Parker became the successful entrepreneur everyone admired, he was a man sitting on my apartment floor, wondering if his dream was over. Nobody wanted to know that before Vanessa Reed became his beautiful bride, she was the woman who cried on my shoulder and called me her sister. Nobody wanted to know that before tonight, I was the person who made all of this possible. Claire. I stopped. It was my mother. Diane Bennett. She was standing near the entrance of the ballroom. She had known I would come. She had also known exactly what would happen. Mothers always know. Especially when their daughters are about to make the same mistake twice. You're leaving. I nodded. Yes. She looked past me. Toward the ballroom. Toward Ethan. Toward the chaos. Did he ask you to fix it? I smiled. A tired smile. Yes. My mother closed her eyes briefly. Not because she was surprised. Because she wasn't. That man has spent 6 years believing your kindness was unlimited. I looked down. I thought I was helping. You were. She touched my arm. But helping someone doesn't mean letting them use you. I didn't answer. Because I knew she was right. But knowing something and accepting it were different things. For years, I had believed love was proven through patience. Through sacrifice. Through staying when things became difficult. I never realized there was a difference between supporting someone and carrying someone. 3 months earlier. The day my divorce was finalized. The courthouse was almost empty. No dramatic scene. No tears. No screaming. Just paperwork. A signature. A judge saying words that officially ended 6 years of marriage. Ethan stood beside me afterward. He looked tired. Not broken. Not guilty. Just tired. Like the divorce was something inconvenient that had happened to him. You're really doing this? I looked at him. Yes. He shook his head. I still don't understand how you can throw away 6 years. That sentence stayed with me. Because it was almost impressive. The person who destroyed the marriage was asking why I gave up on it. You're the one who walked away. His expression changed. I never stopped loving you. I almost believed him. That was the hardest part. Even after everything, a small part of me still wanted to believe him. Then he said, but you have to admit. Claire. You weren't easy to be married to. There it was. The shift. The blame. You were always working. You were always focused on your company. You made me feel like I was just someone standing behind you. I looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. Because I finally understood. Ethan wasn't looking for understanding. He was looking for permission. Permission to feel innocent. Permission to believe he was the victim. Permission to leave without admitting what he had done. So I simply said, goodbye, Ethan. And I walked away. 3 months later, I was sitting in the back of his wedding reception, watching him discover that his new life was built on a foundation he never owned. The irony would have been funny, if it hadn't hurt so much. Claire. I turned around. Olivia Grant was standing behind me. She looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry. I studied her. For what? She hesitated. For believing him. That answer surprised me. Most people apologized when they were caught. Olivia apologized because she finally understood. You believed what everyone believed. She shook her head. No. She looked toward Ethan. I knew Ethan. A pause. But I didn't think he was capable of this. I almost smiled. Neither did I. That was the tragedy. The people who hurt us are rarely strangers. They are usually the people we trusted enough to never suspect. Can I ask you something? I nodded. Why did you come tonight? It was a simple question. But I had asked myself the same thing many times. Why did I come? Why sit through the speeches? Why watch Ethan kiss Vanessa? Why listen to people congratulate them? Why put myself through it? The answer was complicated. I looked back at the ballroom. I needed to see who he became after I stopped being there. Olivia was quiet. I watched Ethan. He was standing near the bar, talking quickly, trying to solve a problem, trying to convince people everything was fine. But nobody was listening the same way anymore. He became exactly who I was afraid he would become. The wedding invitation arrived 3 weeks before tonight. I still remembered opening it. A thick ivory envelope. Gold lettering. A photograph of Ethan and Vanessa printed inside. They looked happy. Perfect. Almost unreal. Under the photo were the words, 2 hearts. 1 future. A love worth waiting for. I almost threw it away. Then I saw the handwritten note. From Vanessa. Claire. I know things between us have been difficult. But I hope someday you understand that some people are simply meant to find each other. I read that sentence 3 times. Not because it hurt. Because I couldn't believe she wrote it. Vanessa. The woman who knew every detail of my marriage. The woman who knew Ethan and I were struggling. The woman who knew I was trying to save our relationship. She wrote as if fate had brought them together. Not choices. Not betrayal. Fate. That was how people justified things they didn't want to admit were wrong. The second message came from Ethan. I hope you can put the past behind you. Vanessa and I want a peaceful beginning. A peaceful beginning. Interesting. Because peaceful beginnings usually didn't require someone else's pain. But I didn't respond. Instead, I called my lawyer. Rachel Monroe. She had handled my divorce. She had also been the person who stopped me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Calling Ethan. Confronting him. Begging for answers. Don't contact him. She told me. Why? Because people like Ethan are good at turning explanations into excuses. I stayed silent. Rachel continued. Claire. You already know the truth. I need proof. No. Her voice softened. You need peace. I looked at the invitation sitting on my desk. I think I need to see it. See what? What happens when I don't save him? There was a long silence. Finally Rachel said, then go. But remember one thing. What? Whatever happens tonight, don't fix it. And I didn't. For the first time in 6 years, I kept my promise. Back inside the ballroom. The situation was getting worse. Ethan's voice became louder. Not enough for everyone to hear. Enough for people nearby. You knew about this and said nothing. I looked at him. Again. You're still blaming me. His face tightened. You could have warned me. I stared at him. And suddenly I understood something. He wasn't upset because the card failed. He was upset because I knew. Because I saw the disaster coming. Because I had information that could have saved him. And because, for the first time, I chose not to use it. You had 3 months. Ethan. He froze. 3 months. Yes. I pointed at the card. 3 months since the divorce. My voice remained calm. You had 3 months to remove yourself from my account. Silence. You had 3 months to ask. You had 3 months to take responsibility. I stepped closer. But you didn't. His expression changed. Because he knew. He didn't forget. He assumed. He assumed I would always be there. That was the difference. Then the hotel manager approached again. But this time, he wasn't holding a payment tablet. He was holding a folder. Mr. Parker. Ethan turned. Yes. The manager looked serious. There is another issue. The ballroom quieted again. Ethan frowned. What issue? The manager opened the folder. Before we continue discussing tonight's payment, he paused. We need to verify the account information used for this event. My heart didn't change. My expression didn't change. Because I already knew. This was the moment everything moved beyond a wedding. Beyond money. Beyond embarrassment. The card was only the beginning. The real problem was hidden in the documents behind that account. The reason Ethan believed he could use my name forever. The reason Vanessa believed she could replace me. And the reason their perfect wedding was about to become the night that destroyed everything. The folder in the hotel manager's hand changed the atmosphere. Not dramatically. Not immediately. But enough. I had learned something about people over the years. Panic rarely appeared all at once. It started with small movements. A hand tightening around a glass. A smile disappearing too quickly. A person suddenly checking their phone. A person looking for someone else to solve their problem. And that night, everyone was beginning to look at Ethan. Not me. Him. Verify the account information. Ethan repeated. The manager nodded. Yes. Mr. Parker. He opened the folder. The card used for this reservation was listed as the primary payment method for several additional services. Ethan frowned. That's correct. The manager glanced at the documents. However, the account holder information does not match your name. A murmur spread through the ballroom. Everyone had already understood that the card wasn't his. But hearing it officially said aloud was different. Ethan's face hardened. I was an authorized user. The manager nodded. Yes. A pause. An authorized user under Claire Bennett's account. My name echoed through the ballroom. Not loudly. But enough. People looked toward me again. The successful businesswoman. The woman who had supposedly been too cold. Too focused on work. Too unwilling to support her husband. Except now everyone was starting to realize something. Maybe I had supported him too much. Ethan noticed the shift. He noticed people were no longer looking at him like the victim. So he did what he always did. He changed the story. Claire. His voice carried through the silence. You're making this seem worse than it is. I looked at him. Am I? Yes. He gestured around the room. You're letting people misunderstand. I almost smiled. That was such an Ethan thing to say. Not asterisk I made a mistake. Asterisk not asterisk I should have handled this. Asterisk not asterisk I'm sorry. Asterisk no. His concern was still the same. The image. The appearance. The story people believed. Misunderstand what? He lowered his voice. That we were married. I stared at him. We were. His expression softened. For a second. I saw the old Ethan. The one who knew exactly how to make me hesitate. The one who knew which memories to bring up. You and I built a life together. I said nothing. 6 years. Still nothing. You're really going to stand there and pretend none of that matters. And there it was. The thing he always used. The past. He took the best moments we shared and used them as a shield against the worst moments he created. 6 years. As if time erased betrayal. As if memories canceled choices. As if love meant someone could hurt you forever and still demand loyalty. I looked at him. Ethan. My voice was quiet. The 6 years mattered. His eyes changed slightly. But they mattered to me because I loved you. A pause. They didn't give you permission to use me forever. Nobody spoke. Not even Vanessa. Because everyone understood something in that moment. The problem wasn't the money. The problem was entitlement. Ethan didn't think he had stolen anything. Because somewhere in his mind, everything I had was still partly his. My company. My connections. My reputation. My patience. My forgiveness. He never saw them as gifts. He saw them as things he deserved. The manager turned another page. There is one more matter. Ethan looked annoyed. Another. Yes. The manager pointed at the document. The final payment agreement was signed under the assumption that this account would remain active. Ethan nodded. Yes. Who informed the hotel that the account would remain active? The question was simple. But Ethan hesitated. Only briefly. The kind of hesitation most people would miss. I didn't. Because I knew him. I handled the arrangements. The manager looked down. Mr. Parker. According to our records. The person who communicated with the hotel regarding the payment guarantee stated that the account holder had approved the charges. The ballroom became still. I felt several eyes move toward me. The account holder. Me. I didn't speak. Because I didn't need to. The question was already forming in everyone's mind. Did Claire approve this? Did she know? Did she agree? Ethan saw the opportunity. She knew about the wedding expenses. I turned my head. Slowly. What? His voice became defensive. You knew Vanessa and I were getting married. That isn't what you said. His jaw tightened. You knew. I knew you were getting married. I looked around. That does not mean I agreed to pay for it. The manager nodded. That is correct. Ethan looked at him. What? The manager remained professional. An authorized user does not become the owner of an account. The words were simple. But they destroyed his argument. Vanessa stepped forward. I think everyone needs to calm down. Interesting. She always said that when she was losing control. Maybe there has been some misunderstanding between Ethan and Claire. I looked at her. Is that what you think? She avoided my eyes. I just think tonight shouldn't become a fight. I almost laughed. A fight. That was an interesting word. Because Vanessa had spent months creating a life built on someone else's marriage. But tonight, when consequences arrived, she wanted peace. Vanessa. She looked at me. Do you remember the first time you came to my apartment? Her expression changed. A small change. But enough. Claire, you were 24. I continued. You had just lost your job. The ballroom was silent. You cried on my couch for 3 hours. Vanessa's lips parted. You told me I was the only person who believed in you. She looked uncomfortable. And I did. My voice softened. I helped you. I paused. I defended you. I introduced you to my friends. I invited you into my home. A silence. And then you walked into my marriage. Vanessa's face turned pale. Ethan immediately stepped forward. Enough. There it was. The instinct. Protect her. Not me. Never me. Even after everything. Even tonight. He protected her. I looked at him. And strangely, that hurt less than before. Because finally, I wasn't surprised. The truth was, I had already mourned Ethan. Months ago. Maybe even before the divorce. Maybe the night I stood outside my bedroom door holding a cheesecake. Maybe the moment I saw Vanessa's shoes beside our front door. Maybe the moment I heard my husband tell another woman that I would never leave him. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not my heart. Something else. The part of me that believed love could fix everything. Claire. Ethan's voice became quieter. Please don't do this. I looked at him. Do what? Destroy everything. That sentence. It almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. Because Ethan truly believed destruction began when I stopped helping. He never considered the possibility that everything was already falling apart. He just noticed when I stopped holding it up. I'm not destroying anything. I looked at Vanessa. Then at him. I'm just no longer hiding what you built. A phone rang. Everyone turned. It was Ethan's. He looked at the screen. The name displayed, Martin Hale, CFO. Ethan answered immediately. Martin. I need you to transfer funds. There was a pause. Then Ethan's expression changed. What do you mean you can't? The ballroom became silent again. I watched his face. Because I knew that expression. The moment someone realizes the problem is bigger than expected. Martin. His voice became tense. You don't understand. Another pause. No. Listen to me. His eyes moved around the room. Everyone was watching. I need the money tonight. Silence. Then his face slowly changed. The confidence disappeared. The businessman disappeared. The man everyone admired disappeared. Only panic remained. What do you mean the account is frozen? That was the moment I knew. The wedding was only the beginning. Because Ethan wasn't just struggling to pay a bill. His entire world was starting to collapse. And he had no idea. I already knew why. The first thing I noticed was not Ethan's expression. It was the silence after the phone call ended. Because everyone in that ballroom knew something had changed. 10 minutes earlier, Ethan Parker had been the center of the room. The successful entrepreneur. The groom everyone admired. The man who had supposedly overcome every obstacle and finally found happiness. Now, he was standing beside his wedding cake. Holding a phone with a hand that was no longer steady. And for the first time that night, nobody rushed to comfort him. Not even Vanessa. She was still holding his arm. But her grip was different. Before, it looked affectionate. Now, it looked like she was holding on to something that was slipping away. What happened? Her voice was low. Ethan didn't answer immediately. That was unusual. Ethan always had an answer. Even when he was wrong. Especially when he was wrong. He was the kind of person who could turn a mistake into a complicated explanation within seconds. But this time, he had nothing. Ethan. Vanessa's voice became sharper. What did Martin say? Everyone was pretending not to listen. But everyone was listening. Ethan finally looked at her. The company accounts are temporarily restricted. Her face changed. Restricted? It's because of a compliance review. Vanessa stared. But your company, I know. His voice was harsher than he intended. The people nearby noticed. So did she. For the first time that evening, Vanessa looked less like a bride. She looked like someone who had just discovered the man beside her wasn't as powerful as he claimed. I watched quietly. 3 months ago, that reaction would have destroyed me. Seeing Ethan struggling. Seeing him afraid. Seeing the person I loved facing a crisis. I would have stepped forward. I would have asked what happened. I would have called someone. I would have found a solution. That was who I was. Or maybe, that was who I had become. Because somewhere between love and responsibility, I had forgotten the difference. 6 years ago, Ethan Parker had nothing. Not nothing in the dramatic sense. He wasn't homeless. He wasn't helpless. He was ambitious. He was intelligent. He had ideas. But ideas didn't pay salaries. Ideas didn't convince investors. Ideas didn't keep a company alive. When I met him, he was running a small technology consulting company from a rented office above a coffee shop. 3 employees. 1 old printer. A desk that shook whenever someone touched it. I remember visiting him for the first time. He apologized immediately. Don't judge the office. I laughed. Why would I? Because your office is 10 times bigger. I looked around. The place was small. But his eyes were different. He believed in it. This is temporary. He pointed around. One day, this will be a real company. I smiled. I believe you. At that time, I meant it. Completely. Because Ethan had something many successful people lacked. He had hunger. He had determination. He worked until midnight. He answered every client call. He knew every detail about his business. I admired that. I admired him. And when someone you love has a dream, you naturally want to help them reach it. That was how it started. Not with money. Not with sacrifice. With belief. The first time I helped Ethan financially was 6 months after we got married. His biggest client delayed payment. His employees still needed salaries. He tried to hide it from me. I noticed. Of course I noticed. I always noticed. You haven't slept in 3 days. He smiled. I'm fine. You're lying. He laughed. You always know. Yes. I sat beside him. How bad is it? He was quiet. That silence told me enough. How much? He looked embarrassed. I'll figure it out. Ethan. I said I'll figure it out. His voice became defensive. And immediately, I regretted asking. Because I knew that expression. Pride. Fear. Shame. All mixed together. So I softened. What if we figure it out together? That sentence changed everything. Because I wasn't just offering money. I was offering partnership. The next morning, I transferred enough money to cover payroll. He hugged me. He held me tightly. I'll pay you back. I smiled. I know. I mean it. Claire. I know. And at that moment, I believed him. Years later, that same money became invisible. That was the strange thing about helping someone. The first time you help them, they remember. The 10th time, they appreciate it. The 100th time, they expect it. The first office expansion, I helped. The investor presentation, I helped. The legal contracts, I introduced him to Rachel. The marketing strategy, my company handled part of it. The Northgate proposal, that was me. Nobody knew. Because Ethan never wanted people to know. At first, I thought he was protecting his pride. Later, I realized he was protecting his image. There was a difference. Claire. Olivia's voice brought me back. She was watching Ethan across the room. He's in trouble, isn't he? I looked at her. Yes. She hesitated. How do you know? Because I knew Ethan. Because I knew every company account. Because I knew every investor. Because for years, I had been the person behind the curtain. But I didn't answer. Instead, I said, because Ethan only looks that scared when something is beyond his control. Olivia was quiet. Then she asked, was he always like this? I looked toward the ballroom. Toward the man I once married. No. The answer came naturally. No. He wasn't. That was the hardest truth. Ethan wasn't always cruel. He wasn't always selfish. He wasn't always someone I couldn't recognize. There was a time when he was the person who made me believe in love. The problem was, success changed him. Or maybe success revealed him. I still didn't know which was worse. 2 years ago, Ethan appeared on the cover of a local business magazine, Chicago's Rising Entrepreneurs. The photo showed him standing in front of his company's new headquarters. A beautiful building. Glass walls. Modern design. Employees working behind him. The article described him as a self-made businessman who built his company through determination and vision. I remember buying the magazine. Not because I wanted recognition. Because I was proud. I brought it home. Placed it on the kitchen counter. When Ethan came home, I smiled. Look. He saw it. For a moment. He looked happy. Then his expression changed. You're not going to tell people you helped. Right. I was confused. What? He picked up the magazine. This is my company. The word surprised me. Ethan. I know. I just don't want people thinking I succeeded because of my wife. There it was. The first crack. Not because he wanted independence. That was understandable. Everyone wanted to build something themselves. The problem was, he didn't just want to stand on his own. He wanted everyone to believe I had never been there. I smiled that day. I told myself, he's insecure. He's under pressure. He'll get over it. I made excuses. Because loving someone sometimes means explaining away things you should be paying attention to. The hotel manager approached again. Mr. Parker. Ethan turned. Yes. The manager handed him another document. This was delivered to the hotel account department earlier today. Ethan frowned. By who? I'm not sure. He opened it. I saw his face change. Not panic. Not anger. Something worse. Recognition. He knew what it was. And that meant, he knew exactly what was coming. Ethan. Vanessa looked at him. What is it? He folded the paper quickly. Nothing. But his voice betrayed him. And I knew. The document wasn't about the wedding. It wasn't about the card. It was about something much bigger. Something he had been hiding. Something connected to my name. Because 3 weeks before tonight, while Ethan was preparing to marry Vanessa, I discovered that someone had been using my company's identity. And the signature they copied was mine. The strange thing about betrayal was that it rarely arrived as a single moment. People imagined betrayal as something dramatic. A confession. A confrontation. A door opening at the wrong time. A person caught in a lie. But real betrayal was usually quieter. It appeared in small details. A password changed. A conversation that stopped when you entered the room. A document you didn't remember signing. A name used somewhere it shouldn't be. And sometimes, it arrived as a copy of your own signature. 3 weeks before Ethan's wedding, I was sitting in my office on the 32nd floor of Bennett Consulting Group when Rachel Monroe walked into my conference room. She didn't bring coffee. She didn't make small talk. That was how I knew something was wrong. Rachel had been my attorney for almost 5 years. She was not the type of lawyer who created unnecessary panic. If Rachel looked concerned, there was a reason. She placed a thick folder on the table. Claire. I looked up from my laptop. What happened? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she opened the folder. Inside were several documents. Contracts. Invoices. Approval forms. My company letterhead. My name. My signature. I looked through the pages. At first, I didn't understand. Then I saw it. The signature. My signature. Except it wasn't mine. It was close. Very close. Close enough that someone unfamiliar with my handwriting would never notice. But I knew. Because I had signed thousands of documents. I knew every curve. Every pressure point. Every slight difference. That's not my signature. Rachel nodded. I know. I looked at her. Where did you get these? Northgate Development Group. My expression changed. Northgate. The name immediately caught my attention. Because Northgate wasn't just another client. It was Ethan's biggest opportunity. The project that transformed his company from a small consulting firm into a recognized business. A multi-million-dollar commercial development. The contract everyone said changed his life. The contract everyone credited him for winning. Except nobody knew, I was the person who opened that door. 2 years earlier. Ethan came home late one night. Later than usual. But that wasn't unusual anymore. His company was growing. His responsibilities were increasing. At least, that was what I told myself. He placed his briefcase on the table. Then he looked at me. I have something. I smiled. What? He sat down. Northgate wants to meet. I immediately understood the importance. Northgate Development Group was one of the largest commercial developers in Illinois. If Ethan got that contract, his company would completely change. That's huge. He nodded. It is. But he didn't look happy. He looked afraid. What happened? He looked away. They're interested. But they don't fully trust our company. That made sense. At the time, Ethan's company was successful. But Northgate worked with firms that had years of proven records. Ethan's company was still young. They need references. More than that. He rubbed his forehead. They need someone they trust to confirm our capabilities. I knew where this was going before he said it. Ethan. He looked at me. Could you help? That was the old Ethan. The man who asked. The man who knew I was doing him a favor. Not the man standing in the ballroom tonight. Not the man who believed my help was his right. Back then, I said yes. Of course I did. I wrote the recommendation letter myself. I contacted people in my network. I arranged introductions. I spent weeks helping him prepare. When Northgate finally signed the contract, Ethan hugged me in our kitchen. We did it. Not asterisk I did it. Asterisk we. That word meant everything to me. We did it. I believed him. I believed we were building something together. But success changes relationships. Sometimes slowly. Sometimes all at once. After Northgate, Ethan's company exploded. More employees. More clients. More money. More attention. And with success came something I didn't expect. Resentment. At first. It was small. A joke. A comment. A little irritation. At a dinner party. Someone laughed. You're lucky. Ethan. Your wife knows everyone. Everyone laughed. Including Ethan. But later. In the car. He was quiet. What? I asked. He stared out the window. Nothing. Ethan. He sighed. I just don't like people thinking I only succeeded because of you. I was surprised. Who thinks that? He didn't answer. Because nobody had said it. It was something he felt. And instead of dealing with his insecurity, he started blaming me for it. The first time he introduced me to a business partner after his company became successful. He said, "This is my wife. Claire." A pause. Then, "She runs her own company." Not, "She helped me build mine." Not, "She believed in me when nobody else did." I told myself it didn't matter. Because love wasn't supposed to need recognition. But slowly, I noticed something. Ethan loved my support. He just didn't like people knowing he needed it. Rachel turned another page. These documents were submitted as part of Northgate's compliance review. I looked at the papers. Compliance review. She nodded. Northgate recently audited several vendors. Rachel's expression became serious. They found irregularities. I stayed silent. What kind of irregularities? She pushed one document toward me. A company name was highlighted. VR Strategic Solutions LLC. I frowned. I don't know this company. That's the problem. Rachel continued. The company claims to provide compliance consulting services. I looked at the documents. Who owns it? She hesitated. Then answered, Vanessa Reed. For several seconds, I didn't move. The room felt strangely quiet. Even though my office was filled with the sound of traffic outside. Vanessa. My best friend. The woman who was about to marry my husband. The woman who sat at my dinner table. The woman who cried when I told her Ethan and I were struggling. The woman who told me Claire. You deserve someone who appreciates you. I looked at Rachel. How much money? Rachel didn't avoid the question. Preliminary estimate. Yes. $400,000. My fingers tightened slightly. Not because of the amount. Because of what it meant. This was bigger than an affair. Bigger than betrayal. They hadn't just lied to me. They had used me. My reputation. My company. My name. Does Ethan know? Rachel was quiet. That answer was enough. Yes. I looked at her. How long? We don't know yet. I closed the folder. For a moment. I felt something. Not anger. Not sadness. Something colder. Clarity. Because suddenly every strange moment from the last year made sense. The distance. The excuses. The way Ethan stopped discussing business with me. The way Vanessa suddenly became interested in consulting. The way they both acted like I was already a person from their past. They weren't just replacing me. They were removing me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Rachel looked at me. Because we needed proof. And now we have enough to investigate. I nodded. Good. She studied me. Claire. Yes. What are you going to do? That was the question everyone would ask. What are you going to do? Expose them? Destroy them? Take revenge? 6 months ago, I would have called Ethan. I would have asked him why. I would have given him a chance. I would have wanted an explanation. But the woman who sat in Rachel's office that day was different. Because I finally understood something. A person who accidentally hurts you feels regret. A person who repeatedly chooses to hurt you feels entitled. Ethan wasn't afraid because he hurt me. He was afraid because I finally stopped accepting it. I'm not going to warn him. Rachel looked surprised. Claire. I'm serious. Why? I looked at the documents. At my stolen signature. At Vanessa's company name. At Ethan's approval records. Because if I tell him, I paused. He'll spend the next 3 weeks trying to fix the evidence. Rachel was silent. And if I say nothing, I closed the folder. He'll keep believing he is untouchable. That was why I went to the wedding. Not for revenge. Not to embarrass him. Not because I wanted to watch him fail. I went because I wanted one thing. The truth. Not the version Ethan told. Not the version Vanessa created. The truth. And now, standing inside the Aurelia Grand Hotel, watching Ethan panic over a $96,400 bill, I knew something he didn't. The wedding disaster was only the first crack. The real collapse was coming. Across the ballroom. Ethan looked at me. His phone still in his hand. His company still unaware of how much danger it was in. Vanessa still believing she had married the winner. The guests still thinking this was about money. But soon, they would know. Soon. Everyone would understand. The card had failed. But the name behind the card was about to bring down everything. The most painful part about betrayal was never the moment you discovered it. It was the realization that the signs had been there all along. The conversations you dismissed. The moments you explained away. The feelings you ignored because accepting the truth meant admitting someone you loved had chosen to hurt you. For months after my divorce, I kept asking myself the same question. When did I lose him? But standing inside that ballroom, watching Ethan desperately search for a solution, I finally understood. I hadn't lost him. I had lost the version of him I created in my head. The man who loved me. The man who appreciated me. The man who would never hurt me. That man had disappeared long before tonight. Maybe he had disappeared the moment he realized I would always forgive him. Claire. Ethan's voice pulled me back. He had moved closer again. Closer than before. But this time, he wasn't angry. He was careful. Almost gentle. I knew that tone too. It was the voice he used when he needed something. Can we talk privately? I looked at him. Why? His eyes moved around the room. Because this doesn't need to happen in front of everyone. I looked around. At the guests. At his family. At Vanessa. Then back at him. You invited 300 people here. His expression tightened. This is my wedding. Exactly. I nodded. Your wedding. Not ours. Not my responsibility. His. The word seemed to bother him more than I expected. Because Ethan had spent years confusing my involvement with ownership. He thought because I helped build his life, I still belonged in it. You're really going to do this? I stared at him. Do what? Walk away. The question sounded almost impossible to him. Like the idea itself was unreasonable. Like leaving was something I was not allowed to do. I looked at the man in front of me. And suddenly I remembered something my mother once told me. Claire. Some people don't miss you. They miss the way life feels when you're taking care of them. At the time. I didn't understand. Now I did. Ethan wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing what I provided. Ethan. Vanessa interrupted. Her voice was softer now. But there was tension underneath. Maybe we should handle this together. I turned toward her. Together. That word sounded strange coming from her. Because Vanessa had always known how to stand beside people. She just didn't know how to stand with them. There was a difference. Together. I repeated. She looked at me. Yes. I smiled slightly. That's interesting. Her expression changed. Why? Because when I was trying to save my marriage, I paused. You weren't trying to help me. The color left her face. Claire. No. My voice remained calm. You don't get to rewrite history now. The ballroom became quiet again. Everyone was watching. But this time, I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't the woman who had been replaced. I was the woman who finally stopped protecting the people who hurt her. 6 years earlier, Vanessa was one of the most important people in my life. That was the cruelest part. She wasn't some stranger. She wasn't someone Ethan met at a party. She was someone I trusted. We met during college. Different majors. Different personalities. Different dreams. But somehow, we became close. Vanessa was outgoing. Warm. Beautiful. The kind of person everyone noticed when she entered a room. I was different. I liked quiet places. Books. Business plans. Long nights working toward goals nobody else understood. She used to joke, Claire. If I ever become successful, it'll be because I learned discipline from you. I laughed. You don't need discipline. Yes. I do. She smiled. You're the reason I believe I can do better. Those words stayed with me. Because I believed them. After Ethan and I married, Vanessa became part of our lives. Too much part. At the time, I never questioned it. Why would I? She was my friend. She came to our apartment. She joined family dinners. She knew our routines. She knew Ethan's habits. She knew when we argued. She knew when we were happy. She knew everything. And I handed her that information willingly. Because I trusted her. The first sign something was wrong happened during our anniversary dinner. It was our 5th anniversary. I had planned everything. A small restaurant by the river. Ethan's favorite wine. A private table. I arrived early. He arrived 40 minutes late. When he sat down, he immediately apologized. Sorry. I smiled. It's okay. He looked exhausted. Work. I nodded. Because I always understood. That was my role. Understanding. Supporting. Waiting. Then his phone lit up. A message. From Vanessa. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. I only saw his expression. The way his face softened. The way he smiled slightly. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Who is it? I asked casually. He put the phone away. Nobody. Nobody. That word stayed with me. Because sometimes the most painful answers are the smallest ones. Back in the ballroom. Ethan stepped closer. You're bringing up things that have nothing to do with tonight. I looked at him. Everything has to do with tonight. He frowned. No. Yes. I pointed toward the wedding decorations. You built this night using things you took from the past. His expression hardened. That's ridiculous. Is it? I looked at Vanessa. Ask her. Vanessa's face changed. What? Ask her what she knew. Ethan looked at Vanessa. And for the first time, he looked uncertain. Not because he doubted her. Because he realized other people might doubt her. Vanessa. She immediately shook her head. I don't know what she means. I watched her. A perfect answer. A practiced answer. No. I asked. You didn't know Ethan still had access to my account. She looked at me. No. Too fast. Again. I tilted my head. That's strange. What? Because the wedding planner's emails were sent to both of you. Silence. Vanessa froze. Ethan looked at me. What emails? I smiled. There it was. The first mistake. The first crack. Because Ethan had just revealed something. Vanessa knew. The wedding planner's emails. The hotel contracts. The upgrade requests. The payment discussions. They weren't sent only to Ethan. They were sent to Vanessa too. Because she was the bride. Because she approved every detail. Because she chose the flowers. The menu. The honeymoon package. The additional expenses. And because she knew exactly which account was being used. My account. Vanessa looked around. Searching. For sympathy. For support. For someone to rescue her. But nobody moved. Not even Ethan. That was the first moment I saw fear between them. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing each other. Because as long as I was the villain, they were united. But when the truth started coming out, they had nowhere to hide. Claire. Ethan's voice became cold again. You're doing this because you're angry. I looked at him. No. I shook my head. I'm doing this because you keep lying. His face changed. You think you're perfect. The question surprised me. Not because it hurt. Because it was predictable. You always think you're right. He continued. You think because you have money and success. You're better than everyone. There it was. The old wound. The one he always used. My success. My ambition. My achievements. He turned them into flaws. I looked at him quietly. Ethan. Yes. You spent 6 years trying to convince people I was too much. A pause. But tonight, I looked around the ballroom. At least everyone finally sees that I was never the problem. Nobody spoke. Then Ethan's phone rang again. This time. He looked afraid before answering. He checked the screen. The name appeared. Rachel Monroe. My lawyer. His face changed. Because he knew. Rachel wasn't calling about the wedding. She was calling about something much bigger. Something that could not be fixed with an apology. Something money could not erase. Ethan answered. Hello. The entire ballroom watched him. For several seconds. He listened. Then his face slowly lost all color. What? A pause. No. Another pause. That's impossible. I watched him. Because I knew exactly what Rachel was telling him. The investigation had officially started. And once it started, there was no going back. Ethan held the phone against his ear. At first. He looked annoyed. Then confused. Then something I had never seen before. Afraid. Not nervous. Not uncomfortable. Afraid. The kind of fear that appears when someone realizes the situation is no longer something they can control. Rachel, he said her name carefully. Everyone in the room knew that name. Rachel Monroe was not just my lawyer. She was the person who had handled Bennett Consulting Group's biggest contracts. The woman who had reviewed every major business decision I made. And 3 months ago, she was the woman who helped me walk away from my marriage. Ethan knew that. He also knew Rachel never called without a reason. Especially not during his wedding. What do you mean the notice was delivered? A pause. His face became colder. Then paler. No. That's not possible. The ballroom was silent. Even the people who had been pretending not to watch were now openly staring. Ethan turned slightly away. But it was too late. Everyone had already seen his reaction. And everyone knew. Something much bigger than a failed credit card was happening. I didn't need to hear Rachel's words. I already knew. Earlier that afternoon. Before I entered this hotel. She had sent the final confirmation. The investigation had moved forward. Northgate Development Group had officially received the evidence. The documents. The forged approvals. The unauthorized company information. The financial records. Everything. 4 months. Ethan believed he was building an empire. But he never realized the foundation was cracking underneath him. And now, the first person who noticed the cracks wasn't him. It was me. Ethan. Vanessa touched his arm. He ignored her. That was the first thing everyone noticed. Because Ethan had spent the entire evening protecting Vanessa. Every uncomfortable moment. Every accusation. Every question. He stood beside her. But now, his attention was somewhere else. Rachel. Listen. His voice lowered. I can explain. I almost smiled. Explain. That word. It followed Ethan everywhere. He believed every problem could be solved if he had enough time to explain. A late payment. Explain. A missed deadline. Explain. A lie. Explain. A betrayal. Explain. But explanations only work when the truth is uncertain. They don't work when documents exist. They don't work when signatures are copied. They don't work when money trails lead directly to someone. What happened? Vanessa asked again. This time. There was frustration in her voice. Not concern. Frustration. Ethan covered the phone. Not now. Her eyes widened. Not now. She looked around. Ethan. Our wedding is falling apart. The words were quiet. But everyone heard them. Our wedding. Not asterisk your problem. Asterisk not asterisk your company. Asterisk not asterisk your mistake. Asterisk for the first time. Vanessa was treating him like a partner. Because the problem had reached her. I watched them carefully. And I remembered something. A year earlier. Before I knew the truth. Before the divorce. Before tonight. Vanessa had sat across from me in my kitchen. She was drinking the tea I made for her. She always liked coming to my apartment. She said it felt peaceful. Claire. She looked at me seriously. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever feel like Ethan doesn't need you? The question surprised me. What do you mean? She looked down at her cup. Sometimes men need to feel important. I frowned. I think Ethan knows he's important. She smiled sadly. Does he? I didn't understand. Not then. I thought she was being supportive. I thought she was helping me understand my husband. She continued, "You're amazing. Claire." I laughed. That sounds like a warning. No. She shook her head. I mean it. A pause. You have everything together. I looked at her. And Ethan. He's always trying to catch up. Those words seemed harmless. But now I understood. Vanessa wasn't comforting me. She was studying me. She was learning where Ethan felt weak. And then she became the person who made him feel strong. Claire. I returned to the ballroom. Ethan had ended the call. He was looking at me. Not with anger anymore. With something else. A desperate kind of calculation. What did you tell Rachel? I stared at him. That question alone told me everything. He wasn't asking asterisk what happened. Asterisk he wasn't asking asterisk why is Northgate investigating us. Asterisk he was asking asterisk how much do you know? Asterisk how much did you hide from me? I asked. His face changed. Claire. No. I shook my head. You don't get to avoid the question anymore. The room became quiet. You used my account. You used my company's reputation. You used my signature. His expression tightened. Stop. Why? I looked at him. Because people are finally hearing the truth. His jaw clenched. Robert Parker stepped forward. Ethan's father. What signature? Everyone froze. Ethan looked at him. Dad, what signature? His voice was stronger this time. I looked at Robert. Then at Ethan. And I realized something. Ethan had never told his family. Not everything. Maybe he told them the marriage ended. Maybe he told them he found happiness. Maybe he told them I was difficult. But he never told them the part where he used my name. Because even Ethan knew that sounded different. Vanessa stepped forward. She's exaggerating. Everyone looked at her. She immediately regretted speaking. Because now she had everyone's attention. Exaggerating. I repeated. Yes. She forced a smile. This is a personal issue between you and Ethan. I tilted my head. Is it? She didn't answer. Because last time I checked, I looked around. Using a company's documents without permission is not a personal issue. Silence. The room changed. Completely. Before tonight, people saw this as a messy divorce. A bitter ex-wife. A jealous former spouse. But now they were starting to see something else. A business problem. Ethan finally spoke. Claire. His voice was low. Don't do this. I looked at him. Do what? Destroy my company. The sentence shocked me. Not because he said it. Because he believed it. He believed my actions destroyed his company. Not his choices. Not his decisions. Not his lies. Mine. You built your company. I said. Remember. He looked away. Because he knew. I continued. I was never on the magazine covers. I was never the person giving interviews. I was never the one taking credit. I stepped closer. But somehow, my voice became softer. I'm always the person blamed when everything falls apart. Nobody moved. Then Rachel's voice came through Ethan's phone. He had forgotten to hang up. Her voice was faint but clear. Ethan Parker. Everyone looked toward the phone. Rachel continued. This is your final notice. Ethan froze. The Northgate Compliance Department has suspended all pending payments to Parker Innovations. A gasp moved through the room. The board has requested a full investigation into the vendor relationships connected to VR Strategic Solutions. Vanessa's face instantly changed. Because she knew that name. Everyone saw it. Rachel continued. Until the investigation is complete, all company assets related to the Northgate contract will be frozen. The ballroom became completely silent. Ethan slowly lowered the phone. Vanessa looked at him. VR Strategic Solutions. Her voice shook. What does she mean? Ethan didn't answer. And that silence was the answer. The wedding music stopped completely. The lights above the dance floor remained bright. The flowers were still beautiful. The cake was still untouched. Everything looked exactly the same. But the meaning had changed. An hour ago, this was supposed to be Ethan and Vanessa's perfect beginning. Now, it was the night their lives started collapsing. And the most terrifying part for Ethan wasn't that I knew the truth. It wasn't that Northgate was investigating. It wasn't even that his company might fall. The most terrifying thing was this: for the first time in 6 years, I knew the truth. And I wasn't helping him hide it. The silence after Rachel's announcement felt different. The silence before had been filled with curiosity. People were wondering what happened. They were trying to understand. They were waiting for an explanation. But now, they knew something was wrong. Not a small misunderstanding. Not a fight between an ex-husband and ex-wife. Something much bigger. A company had been frozen. A business deal was under investigation. And the name connected to it was Ethan Parker. The same man who had spent the entire evening standing beneath golden lights, telling everyone he had finally found happiness. Now he looked like someone watching his entire future disappear. Claire. Ethan's voice was low. Almost a whisper. I looked at him. For the first time that night. He wasn't trying to appear powerful. He wasn't trying to control the room. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He looked like the man I met 7 years ago. The man who sat in a tiny office above a coffee shop. The man who once told me his biggest fear was failing. The difference was, back then, I wanted to save him. Now, I knew better. What did you send Rachel? His question was simple. But I heard the fear behind it. Not asterisk why did you do this? Asterisk not asterisk how could you hurt me? Asterisk only asterisk how much do you know? Asterisk I looked at him. You're still asking the wrong question. His eyebrows tightened. What? You should be asking yourself why I had to find out this way. Vanessa stepped forward. Claire. This has gone too far. Her voice shook. But this time, nobody rushed to comfort her. That bothered her. I could see it. For years, Vanessa had been the person everyone wanted to protect. The sweet friend. The innocent woman. The person who was always misunderstood. But tonight, people were starting to look closer. And Vanessa hated being looked at closely. Do you even understand what you're doing? She asked. You're destroying Ethan's life. I looked at her. His life. Yes. She swallowed. You know what happens if his company collapses? I nodded. I do. Then how can you stand there? I stared at her. And I realized something. She truly believed I was cruel. Not because I was hurting them. Because I was no longer helping them. That was the difference. People who benefit from your kindness often become angry when you finally set boundaries. Let me ask you something. Vanessa. She went quiet. When did you find out about the account? Her face changed. Only slightly. But enough. I told you. No. I shook my head. You avoided the question. I didn't know. You knew enough to choose a $20,000 wedding dress. She froze. You knew enough to approve the private suites. Silence. You knew enough to add the midnight seafood reception. Her expression became uncomfortable. And you knew enough to believe someone else would pay. Ethan stepped in. Claire. Stop. I looked at him. Why? His voice hardened. Because Vanessa didn't do anything wrong. That sentence. That instinct. That immediate defense. It told me everything. Even now. Even when his company was collapsing. Even when his own family was questioning him. His first reaction was still protecting her. Not explaining himself. Not apologizing. Protecting her. I looked at Vanessa. Do you remember the old tablet? Her expression changed instantly. A small movement. Almost invisible. But I saw it. Ethan saw it too. What tablet? He looked between us. I smiled. Interesting. He didn't know. That meant Vanessa had kept something from him too. The perfect couple was beginning to crack. The tablet was old. Almost forgotten. It was sitting in a drawer in our old apartment. A device we bought when Ethan's company first started growing. He used it for work. Emails. Documents. Cloud backups. After we separated. I almost threw it away. Almost. Then Rachel told me something important. Don't delete anything. At the time. I didn't understand why. Until one night. While organizing old files. I turned it on. The tablet automatically connected to Ethan's cloud account. And there they were. Messages. Photos. Documents. Things Ethan thought were gone. Things he deleted from his phone. Things he believed nobody would ever see. But technology remembers. Even when people don't want it to. The first message was from Vanessa. Vanessa * Claire is leaving for Boston tomorrow. How long are you going to keep pretending? I remember staring at that sentence. Not because I was surprised. Because I was finally seeing the truth clearly. Another message. Ethan * until Northgate is finalized. * My fingers froze. Another. Vanessa * you mean until you don't need her anymore. * A long pause. Then Ethan * you know I love you. * And then Ethan * but Claire's connections are important right now. * I sat there for a long time. Reading. Not crying. Not screaming. Just reading. Because sometimes the truth hurts less than the uncertainty before it. Back in the ballroom. Ethan looked at me. What are you talking about? I didn't answer immediately. I unlocked my phone. Opened the folder. The one I had prepared weeks ago. The one I hoped I would never need. Then I looked around. At his parents. At Vanessa's family. At the people who came here believing they knew Ethan Parker. I think everyone deserves to know why this happened. Ethan's face changed. No. A single word. But there was fear in it. I had never heard him say no like that. Not because he was angry. Because he was scared. Claire. He stepped toward me. Don't. I looked at him. Why? His voice dropped. Because this doesn't involve them. I almost smiled. That was exactly the problem. 4 months. He told everyone a story about our marriage. About our divorce. About Vanessa. He involved them. He just didn't involve them with the truth. I turned my phone around. Not toward everyone. Toward Robert Parker. Ethan's father. Mr. Parker. He looked at me. I don't want to embarrass anyone. A pause. But I think you deserve to know what happened before this wedding. Robert's face was serious. Claire. His voice was tired. Is it true? Nobody moved. He wasn't asking me. He was asking Ethan. The room became completely silent. Ethan looked at his father. Then at Vanessa. Then back at me. And for the first time, he had no explanation. I showed Robert the first screenshot. His eyes moved across the screen. Then the second. Then the third. His expression slowly changed. Disappointment. Not anger. Disappointment. Because some things hurt more when they come from someone you raised. What is this? Robert whispered. Ethan immediately responded. Dad. It's not what it looks like. The sentence came automatically. Almost rehearsed. I had heard it before. Everyone had. It's not what it looks like. The universal sentence of people who know exactly what it looks like. Vanessa suddenly stepped back. No. Her voice was small. I didn't know he said those things. Everyone looked at her. Ethan stared. What? She looked at him. You told me she knew. The room went silent. I felt it. The moment. The exact second. When two people who had built their relationship on lies realized those lies could no longer protect them. Ethan's face changed. Vanessa. She looked at him. You said she was already done with the marriage. A pause. You said she didn't care. Her eyes filled with tears. You said she would never find out. Nobody spoke. Because that sentence answered everything. Not directly. Not completely. But enough. The story Ethan and Vanessa created was collapsing. Not because I destroyed it. Because they could no longer maintain it. I looked at Ethan. Do you remember what you told me after I found out? His face went pale. Claire, you said it was a mistake. Silence. You said you were confused. Another pause. You said you never wanted to hurt me. I stepped closer. But you planned everything. His eyes moved away. You waited for Northgate. You waited until your company became stable. You waited until you believed you didn't need me. My voice became quieter. And then you married her. The ballroom remained silent. The wedding cake stood untouched. The flowers were still perfect. The champagne was still sparkling. But the illusion was gone. Because everyone finally understood. This wasn't a woman who couldn't accept her husband moved on. This was a woman who discovered the people closest to her had built their happiness on her sacrifice. Then the hotel manager walked back into the room. This time. He didn't look uncomfortable. He looked serious. Mr. Parker. Ethan turned. Yes. The manager glanced at the clock. We need your final payment decision. A pause. And we also need confirmation regarding the account holder dispute. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Because he finally understood. Tonight wasn't ending with a cancelled wedding service. It was ending with everything. His marriage. His reputation. His company. His perfect story. All at once. For years. I wondered what the hardest moment of betrayal would feel like. I thought it would be the day I discovered Ethan and Vanessa. I thought it would be the moment I realized my husband had fallen in love with my best friend. I thought it would be the moment I packed my things and walked away from the home we built together. But I was wrong. The hardest moment wasn't discovering the truth. It was watching other people discover it. Because once the truth was spoken aloud, there was no way to put it back. No more explanations. No more excuses. No more carefully edited stories. Only reality. And reality was something Ethan Parker had spent years avoiding. Robert Parker looked at the screenshots in silence. He didn't move. He didn't speak. But everyone in the room could see the disappointment on his face. A father always knows when his child has crossed a line. Not because he understands every detail. Because he recognizes the person standing in front of him is no longer the person he believed they were. Ethan. Robert finally spoke. His voice was calm. Too calm. What am I looking at? Ethan immediately stepped forward. Dad. You don't understand. Robert looked up. Then explain. That was the moment Ethan should have told the truth. He should have admitted everything. He should have said I made a mistake. I hurt Claire. I handled things badly. Instead. He did what he always did. He searched for a way to survive. Claire is taking things out of context. I almost laughed. Out of context. The favorite phrase of people who know the context is dangerous. I looked at him. Which part is out of context? He didn't answer. The messages. Silence. The account. Silence. The forged documents. His face changed. Only slightly. But enough. Vanessa noticed too. And that was when something interesting happened. 4 months. Ethan and Vanessa had been united. They had one story. One version of events. One person to blame. Me. But lies only work when everyone benefits from protecting them. The moment protecting the lie becomes more dangerous than admitting it, people start protecting themselves. Vanessa looked at Ethan. You never told me she knew. The room went still. Ethan frowned. What? You told me she didn't care. Her voice became louder. You told me your marriage was already over. Ethan stared at her. Vanessa. No. She shook her head. You said she only cared about work. A pause. You said she had emotionally left years ago. Everyone heard it. The excuse. The story. The version of me they had created. I looked at Ethan. So that's what you told her. He looked away. And that was the answer. I remembered the first time Ethan said those words to me. Not about Vanessa. About himself. It was after a business dinner. He came home late. I had waited. Dinner was cold. The apartment was quiet. You're never really here anymore. He said. I looked up. What? He took off his jacket. You're always working. I stared at him. I'm working because your company needs help. His expression changed. That's exactly what I mean. What? You think money fixes everything. I remember that moment. Because I couldn't understand him. I thought I was supporting him. He thought I was controlling him. I thought we were building together. He thought I was making him feel small. The tragedy was, we were living in 2 completely different marriages. Claire. Ethan's voice brought me back. He looked exhausted. You don't understand what happened between us. I looked at him. You're right. A pause. I don't. His eyes softened slightly. Maybe he thought I was finally listening. Then I continued. Because I would never do what you did. The hope disappeared. The hotel staff began quietly moving around the ballroom. They had waited long enough. The wedding was no longer a celebration. It was a financial problem. The manager approached the DJ. The music equipment was lowered. The bartender received instructions. The guests noticed. Of course they noticed. People always notice when luxury disappears. Especially people who came expecting perfection. The champagne tower remained untouched. The expensive seafood display started being removed. The private bar service stopped. The elegant atmosphere slowly disappeared. And with everything removed, Ethan looked smaller. Mr. Parker. The hotel manager returned. I need to inform you that the additional services will be suspended. Vanessa looked shocked. What? The manager repeated, the premium package. The upgraded reception. The extended ballroom reservation. The late-night dining. All services not covered by completed payments will end. Vanessa turned toward Ethan. You have to fix this. Everyone heard her. Not asterisk will fix this. Asterisk not asterisk what should we do? Asterisk only asterisk you have to fix this. Asterisk Ethan noticed. I knew he noticed. Because for the first time that night, he looked at Vanessa differently. Not with love. With disappointment. Because when he needed someone to believe in him, she was asking him to solve the problem. A few guests began leaving. Quietly. Politely. The people who had arrived expecting a perfect love story now wanted distance. Some avoided eye contact. Some whispered. Some looked embarrassed for being there. The wedding Ethan designed as proof of his victory was becoming evidence of his failure. Then Ethan did something I never expected. He came back to me. Not angry. Not accusing. Not demanding. Begging. Claire. I looked at him. His voice was barely above a whisper. Please. The word hung between us. For a second, I remembered everything. The first apartment. The first office. The nights we ate cheap takeout because we were saving money. The dreams. The promises. The man he used to be. And that was the hardest part. Because I didn't hate Ethan. I wish I did. Hate would have been easier. But I didn't hate him. I just finally accepted that loving someone didn't mean allowing them to destroy you. What do you want me to do? I asked. His eyes moved around. The guests. The hotel. Vanessa. His company. His entire life falling apart. You can pay the balance. There it was. The truth. Even now. Even after everything. Even after the betrayal. His solution was still me. I looked at him. Ethan. Yes. Do you even hear yourself? He froze. You are standing at your wedding. A pause. With another woman. Another pause. And you're asking your ex-wife to pay for it. His face turned red. I know how it sounds. No. I shook my head. You don't. Because if he understood, he would have apologized before asking. If he understood, he would have been ashamed before being embarrassed. If he understood, he would have protected me the way he expected me to protect him. But he didn't. He only understood consequences. Not pain. I can pay it back. His voice became desperate. I swear. I looked at him. You said that before. He stopped. Every time. I continued. When you borrowed money. When I helped your company. When I guaranteed your loans. When I introduced you to Northgate. You always said you would pay me back. My voice became quieter. But Ethan, you never did. The room was silent. Even Vanessa looked away. Because she knew. Everyone knew. The man who claimed he built himself alone, had been standing on someone else's shoulders the entire time. I reached into my purse. Not for a card. Not for money. For an envelope. Ethan saw it. His face changed. What is that? I looked at him. The reason I came tonight. I placed it on the table. He stared at it. What is this? I didn't answer. Because he would find out soon enough. Inside that envelope was not revenge. Not anger. Not punishment. Just proof. The proof that would explain everything. The proof that would show exactly how he built his empire. And who he destroyed while doing it. Ethan slowly opened the envelope. The first page made his expression change. The second page made him stop breathing. The third page made Vanessa step backward. Because she recognized the company name. VR Strategic Solutions LLC. And beneath it was her name. The wedding had started with a failed card. But it was ending with something much bigger. A failed empire. The envelope stayed on the table between us. Nobody touched it. Not Ethan. Not Vanessa. Not even the people standing closest to us. Because everyone in that ballroom understood something. Whatever was inside that envelope, was the reason I had remained silent all night. It was the reason I had watched the wedding collapse without saying a word. It was the reason I had allowed Ethan to believe there was still a chance I would save him. Because I didn't come here to destroy him. I came here to stop him. There was a difference. Claire. Ethan looked at the envelope. Then at me. His voice was quieter than before. What did you do? I almost smiled. The question was revealing. Not asterisk what is inside. Asterisk not asterisk is this about the company. Asterisk not asterisk can you explain. Asterisk only asterisk what did you do? Asterisk because somewhere in his mind, I was still the person causing the problem. Not the person exposing it. I didn't do anything. I looked at him. I just stopped covering for you. His face tightened. You're making a mistake. No. I shook my head. The mistake was believing you would eventually become someone who deserved my trust. Ethan opened the envelope. His fingers were slightly shaking. The first page. A financial report. The second page. A list of transactions. The third page. A contract between Parker Innovations and VR Strategic Solutions LLC. He stopped. Because now he knew. He knew exactly what he was looking at. Vanessa stepped closer. What is it? Ethan didn't answer. That scared her more than anything else. Because Vanessa was used to Ethan having control. He always had a plan. He always knew what to say. He always knew how to make himself look right. But now, he was silent. Ethan. Her voice became sharper. What is that? He finally looked at her. And for the first time that night, there was anger in his eyes. Not toward me. Toward her. Did you know about this? Vanessa froze. What? The company. Silence. VR Strategic Solutions. Her expression changed. Only for a second. But everyone saw. She looked around. Searching. For an escape. That's not what you think. I almost laughed. That sentence again. Everyone who lies eventually says the same thing. Then explain. Ethan's voice was cold. Vanessa looked at him. You told me you handled everything. The ballroom became quiet. That sentence was not meant to be heard by everyone. But it was. And now it was too late. Ethan stared at her. What did you say? Vanessa realized her mistake. I mean, no. His expression darkened. What did you mean? She looked at him. Then at me. Then back at him. I thought you knew. The words were soft. But they destroyed him. Because that meant she had information he didn't expect her to reveal. I watched them. And I remembered the first time I saw VR Strategic Solutions. Not the documents. Not the investigation. The company name. It appeared on an invoice 6 months earlier. At the time. I didn't think much about it. Ethan worked with many vendors. Many consultants. Many partners. I trusted him. That was my mistake. Trusting someone means giving them access. Access to your life. Your information. Your weaknesses. And some people don't use that access to protect you. They use it to study you. The investigation began with one question. Why was a company owned by Vanessa Reed receiving payments connected to Northgate? At first. It looked like a normal consulting arrangement. That was how they designed it. Small payments. Different invoices. Different descriptions. Compliance consulting. Market research. Strategic planning. Nothing unusual. Until Rachel compared the dates. Every payment happened shortly after Northgate released funds to Parker Innovations. Money came in. Then money went out. To Vanessa's company. And the strangest part. VR Strategic Solutions had no employees. No office. No real clients. No business history. It existed for one reason. To move money. You're making this look like fraud. Ethan finally spoke. His voice was defensive. I looked at him. Because it is. No. He shook his head. You don't understand business. That sentence. That old sentence. The one he used whenever he wanted to make me feel like I didn't belong. I almost smiled. Really? I stepped closer. Ethan. You forget something. What? I built a company before you built yours. Silence. I understand business. My voice remained calm. I understand contracts. I understand financial structures. I understand exactly how money moves. A pause. And I understand when someone is trying to hide it. His father looked at him. Is this true? Ethan didn't answer. Robert's expression changed. Ethan. The disappointment in his voice was worse than anger. Answer me. Ethan looked away. That was enough. A father doesn't need every detail. Sometimes silence is the answer. Vanessa suddenly turned toward me. You planned this. Everyone looked at her. I raised my eyebrows. What? She wiped away a tear. You waited until the wedding. There it was. The accusation. You wanted to humiliate us. I stared at her. For a moment. I felt tired. Not angry. Tired. Because even now, even with evidence in front of them, they still wanted to make me the villain. You think I planned this? I asked. Yes. Her voice shook. You knew today was important. I nodded. You're right. She looked surprised. You're admitting it. I knew today was important. A pause. That's why I chose today. Everyone went quiet. Ethan looked at me. What does that mean? I looked at him. It means this was the last day you could pretend. The words hit harder than shouting. Because Ethan understood. I didn't choose the wedding because I wanted revenge. I chose it because Ethan had spent months building a public story. A story where he was the victim. A story where Vanessa was the innocent woman who loved him. A story where I was the cold wife who couldn't make him happy. And today, hundreds of people were here to hear the truth. Claire. Ethan's voice became softer. Please. Again. That word. Please. The word he used when he needed me. I looked at him. Do you know what hurts the most? He didn't answer. It's not that you chose her. Vanessa looked down. It's not even that you lied. I paused. It's that you still believe I owe you something. His face changed. Because that was the truth. He didn't just lose my money. He lost the person who made his life easier. The hotel manager approached one final time. Mr. Parker. Ethan looked exhausted. What? We have received confirmation from the accounting department. A pause. The payment account will not be reopened. Everyone knew what that meant. The wedding was over. The fantasy was over. The luxury was over. The life Ethan thought he could maintain was gone. But then the manager continued. And there is one more message. Ethan looked up. From whom? The manager hesitated. Northgate Development Group. The entire ballroom went silent. Ethan's face changed. What message? The manager looked at the document. Effective immediately, he paused. Northgate has terminated the partnership review process with Parker Innovations. A wave of shock moved through the room. But the manager wasn't finished. Additionally, they have requested all documentation related to Bennett Consulting Group's involvement. My heart didn't move. Because I knew. This was the final piece. The part Ethan never expected. Northgate didn't just want answers. They wanted to know how my name had been used. Ethan looked at me. And finally, he understood. This was never about a credit card. It was never about a wedding bill. It was never about tonight. Tonight was simply the moment the world stopped believing his story. The real battle had just begun. People often imagine the collapse of a company as something dramatic. A newspaper headline. A police investigation. A courtroom. A crowd of angry employees standing outside a building. But the truth is usually quieter. Companies don't collapse in one moment. They collapse one decision at a time. One lie at a time. One person choosing their own survival over everyone else. And for Ethan Parker, the collapse started at his wedding. The Aurelia Grand Hotel had once been the place where Ethan wanted everyone to remember his success. The flowers. The lights. The champagne. The expensive decorations. Everything was designed to send one message: Ethan Parker had made it. But now every detail looked different. The flowers looked unnecessary. The decorations looked wasteful. The empty champagne glasses looked like evidence. The ballroom was no longer a celebration. It was a courtroom without a judge. And Ethan was standing in the center. His phone rang again. This time. He didn't answer immediately. He looked at the screen. Then at everyone around him. Like he already knew the news would be bad. Finally. He answered. Martin. His CFO. The same man who had helped Ethan build Parker Innovations. The same man who had attended this wedding as a guest. Tell me what happened. A pause. Ethan's face changed. What do you mean the employees are asking questions? Silence. Then, no. Another pause. That's impossible. I watched him carefully. Because I knew Ethan. When he said impossible, it usually meant one thing. He had never considered the possibility that he could fail. What is happening? Vanessa asked. This time. There was fear in her voice. Not irritation. Not anger. Fear. Ethan covered the phone. Nothing. I almost smiled. Nothing. The word people use when everything is happening. Ethan. Vanessa stared at him. Don't lie to me. That sentence surprised everyone. Including him. Because for the first time, Vanessa wasn't protecting him. She was demanding answers. You told me everything was secure. Ethan looked at her. I thought it was. You thought. Her voice rose slightly. You thought. The guests nearby looked uncomfortable. They were witnessing something they were never supposed to see. The perfect couple. The perfect wedding. The perfect future. Breaking apart. I looked away. Not because I felt sorry for them. Because I remembered. I remembered being Vanessa. Not literally. But emotionally. The woman standing beside someone she trusted. The woman believing the person she loved would protect her. The difference was, when I discovered Ethan's betrayal. I looked inward. Vanessa looked for someone to blame. And that told me everything. Martin. Ethan returned to the call. What exactly happened? The ballroom was quiet. Everyone listened. Even though they pretended not to. Then Ethan's expression changed. The bank. A pause. No. His voice lowered. You can't freeze those accounts. Another pause. Because I said so. For a second. His old arrogance returned. The Ethan everyone knew. The businessman who believed confidence could solve anything. Then Martin said something. And that confidence disappeared. Slowly. Completely. I understand. A pause. Send me everything. He ended the call. Nobody spoke. Then Robert Parker asked what happened. Ethan didn't answer. His father stepped closer. What happened? Ethan. This time. Ethan couldn't avoid it. The company accounts are temporarily restricted. His father frowned. Why? Ethan looked down. Because of the investigation. A silence. And because Northgate requested a review of our financial records. Robert closed his eyes. A father's disappointment was painful to watch. Not because he hated his son. Because he remembered the person his son used to be. Ethan. Robert's voice was low. Did you use Claire's company? The question hit harder than anything else. Because that was the question Ethan had been avoiding. Not, did you cheat? Not, did you lie? But, did you use someone who trusted you? Ethan didn't answer. And again, silence became the truth. Vanessa suddenly spoke. I didn't know. Everyone turned. Her voice was shaking. I swear. Ethan looked at her. What? I didn't know the details. The room became still. You said everything was legal. Ethan stared at her. You're blaming me. No. She shook her head. I'm saying you handled it. The words hung in the air. Handled it. Not we. Not together. You. I watched the two people who destroyed my marriage begin destroying each other. And strangely, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No happiness. Just emptiness. Because revenge was never as satisfying as people imagined. The truth was enough. Claire. Ethan turned back to me. Everyone became quiet. Because they knew. The conversation had returned to where it started. Me. You knew this would happen. I looked at him. Yes. His eyes narrowed. When? 3 weeks ago. His face changed. 3 weeks. Yes. And you said nothing. I nodded. I did not. His anger returned. You let me walk into this. I looked at him. No. I shook my head. You walked into this yourself. The sentence silenced him. Because it was true. I didn't create the documents. I didn't create VR strategic solutions. I didn't create the fake contracts. I didn't create the lies. I simply stopped standing in front of the consequences. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was quieter now. And for the first time, it sounded less like anger. More like confusion. Maybe he truly didn't understand. Maybe he genuinely believed I should have warned him. I looked at him. Because I wanted to know something. What? Whether you would ever choose honesty if nobody forced you. He froze. Anne. I looked around. At the wedding. At Vanessa. At his family. At the mess he created. You didn't. A few guests quietly left. Then more. Nobody wanted to be the last person standing in a ruined wedding. The ballroom slowly emptied. The people who came to celebrate Ethan's new life were leaving before the night was even over. The symbolism was almost perfect. The same people who watched him rise, were now watching him fall. Outside the ballroom, Ethan's employees began calling. One after another. His phone wouldn't stop. A senior manager. A legal advisor. a project director. Every call brought another piece of bad news. A client wanted answers. An investor wanted a meeting. Employees wanted explanations. The company that Ethan spent years building was suddenly demanding the one thing he avoided most: accountability. Then one call came. A call that changed his expression completely. He answered. Hello. Silence. Then, no. His voice cracked. No. That can't happen. He walked away from everyone. But not far enough. We all heard. Rachel. Listen to me. My eyes narrowed. Rachel. Why was my lawyer calling him directly? Then I understood. She wasn't calling him. She was delivering something. A final notice. A legal warning. A boundary. Ethan listened. His face became completely pale. When he ended the call, he looked at me. Not angry. Not accusing. Broken. What did you do? I looked at him. There it was again. The question he always asked. Not, what did I do? What did you do? I stood there quietly. Because this time, I wanted him to hear the answer. I protected myself. The wedding ended at 11:47 p.m. No first dance. No speeches. No celebration. No happily ever after. Just a man standing in an empty ballroom, watching everything he built begin to disappear. And the worst part. He still didn't understand. He thought losing me was the tragedy. He didn't realize, losing me was the only thing that prevented him from losing everything sooner. The morning after Ethan Parker's wedding was supposed to be the beginning of his new life. At least, that was what everyone thought. The newspapers had already prepared the headlines. The business magazines had already scheduled interviews. The photos had already been selected. Ethan and Vanessa. The successful entrepreneur and his beautiful new wife. A story about ambition. A story about love. A story about a man who overcame everything. But instead of waking up as the most admired businessman in Chicago, Ethan woke up to dozens of missed calls. At 6:12 a.m. His phone rang for the 23rd time. He opened his eyes. For a moment. He forgot. Forgot the ballroom. Forgot the failed payment. Forgot the investigation. Forgot the way everyone looked at him. Then reality returned. Slowly. Painfully. His wedding night. The night that was supposed to prove he had won. Had become the night everything started falling apart. He reached for his phone. The screen was full of notifications. 14 missed calls from Parker Innovations. 6 messages from investors. 3 emails marked urgent. And 1 message from Vanessa. Only 4 words. We need to talk. Not asterisk are you okay? Asterisk not asterisk I'm coming over. Asterisk not asterisk we'll fix this. Asterisk just asterisk we need to talk. Asterisk Ethan stared at the message for a long time. Because somewhere deep inside, he finally understood something. When everything was going well, people wanted to stand beside him. When everything collapsed, they wanted answers. The Parker Innovations headquarters had never been this quiet. The building was only 2 years old. Glass walls. Modern furniture. A reception area designed to impress investors. The kind of office that made people believe success lived there. I remembered the first time I walked inside. Ethan was so proud. Look. He had smiled. We made it. I smiled too. Because I thought we made it. I didn't realize he meant himself. When Ethan entered the office that morning, everyone became silent. Not respectful silence. Uncomfortable silence. Employees looked at him. Then quickly looked away. People who once greeted him with excitement now avoided his eyes. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Ethan cared deeply about how people saw him. Sometimes more than what was actually happening. Where is Martin? He asked. The receptionist hesitated. Conference room. Who's with him? Another pause. The legal team. Ethan stopped. The legal team. The receptionist nodded. Yes. A bad feeling appeared. Inside the conference room. Martin Hale was sitting with 3 attorneys. The moment Ethan entered, everyone stopped talking. Tell me. Ethan sat down. What happened? Martin looked exhausted. He had probably not slept all night. Northgate has suspended the contract. Ethan nodded. I know. No. Martin looked at him. You don't. A silence. They didn't just suspend the contract. He opened a folder. They requested a complete audit. Ethan's expression changed. Why? Martin didn't answer immediately. That hesitation bothered Ethan. Martin. The CFO sighed. Because they found inconsistencies. In what? Vendor payments. A pause. Specifically, he looked down. Payments to VR Strategic Solutions. Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment. He didn't speak. Because hearing the name out loud made everything real. Vanessa's company. Martin looked surprised. So you knew? Ethan immediately answered, no. Too quickly. Martin noticed. Everyone noticed. Because the problem with lying is, the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. But the people around you learn your patterns. They know when you're hiding something. Ethan. One of the lawyers spoke. We need to understand your involvement. My involvement? Yes. The lawyer remained calm. Did you authorize payments to VR Strategic Solutions? Ethan looked away. I approved business expenses. That wasn't my question. Silence. Did you know the company had no employees? Ethan didn't answer. Did you know it was registered under Vanessa Reed? Still silence. The room became colder. Because silence was becoming Ethan's answer. Meanwhile, Vanessa was already planning her escape. I learned that later. At the time, I was sitting in my office reviewing the next steps with Rachel. My life had become strangely peaceful. No late-night arguments. No unanswered questions. No wondering where Ethan was. No trying to understand someone who refused to explain himself. Peace was strange at first. Almost uncomfortable. Because when you spend years living in chaos, calm feels unfamiliar. You're quiet today. Rachel looked at me. I smiled slightly. I'm thinking. About Ethan. I looked out the window. No. That surprised her. No. I shook my head. I used to think everything I did was connected to him. A pause. But it isn't anymore. Rachel smiled. That's progress. I nodded. Because she was right. For years. My decisions were influenced by one question asterisk how will this affect Ethan? Asterisk now I asked something different. Asterisk how will this affect me? Asterisk at noon. My assistant walked in. Claire. Yes. There's something you should see. She placed a tablet on my desk. A news article. The headline, Parker Innovations faces internal investigation following Northgate review. I read the article. No emotions. No satisfaction. Just facts. Then I saw the photograph. Ethan. Standing outside his company. Looking exhausted. For a second. I remembered the young man I met years ago. The man who had dreams. The man who believed hard work mattered. The man who once promised me, I'll build something worthy of you. I closed the article. Because that man was gone. That evening. Ethan came to my office. I wasn't surprised. Some part of me expected it. People always return to the place where they once felt safe. Even after destroying it. My assistant informed me. Mr. Parker is here. I was silent for a moment. Then, let him in. Ethan walked into my office. But he looked different. Not physically. Emotionally. The confidence was gone. The expensive suit was still there. The expensive watch was still there. But the person wearing them looked exhausted. He stood across from my desk. Neither of us spoke. Finally. He said, I need your help. There it was. The sentence that defined our marriage. I looked at him. Do you know what's strange? He frowned. What? You're the first person who has come into this office today asking me for something. He looked down. I know. No. I shook my head. You don't. I stood up. For years. Ethan. Everyone thought I was lucky. Because I had a successful company. Because I had money. Because I had connections. But nobody saw the part where I spent every day protecting yours. His eyes moved. I know I hurt you. The sentence surprised me. Because it was the first time. The first time he didn't say asterisk you misunderstood. Asterisk the first time he didn't say asterisk you're overreacting. Asterisk the first time he simply admitted it. I know. I looked at him. But knowing now doesn't change what you chose before. He sat down. His shoulders lowered. I lost everything. I looked at him. No. He looked up. What? You lost what you built using lies. A pause. But you still have the chance to become someone different. He stared at me. You're not going to help me. The old Ethan was back for a second. The expectation. The assumption. The belief that my kindness was still available. I answered honestly. No. His face fell. But, I continued. I hope you learn how to save yourself. That was the first time Ethan Parker truly understood. I wasn't punishing him. I wasn't taking revenge. I wasn't trying to destroy him. I was simply no longer carrying him. And for someone who had spent 6 years depending on another person's strength, that was the hardest loss of all. After he left, I received one final message. From Vanessa. A single sentence. You won. Are you happy now? I stared at the screen. Then typed my reply. 3 words. This isn't a game. Because it never was. For a long time, I believed revenge meant watching someone lose everything. I thought one day Ethan would stand in front of me, broken and regretful, and I would finally feel satisfied. I imagined him realizing my worth. I imagined him understanding what he had lost. I imagined him wishing he could go back. But when that day actually came, I felt nothing. Not happiness. Not victory. Only peace. Because I finally understood something. The opposite of love was not hate. The opposite of love was indifference. And Ethan Parker had become someone I no longer needed to hate. 6 months after the wedding disaster, Bennett Consulting Group announced its largest expansion in company history. The headline appeared everywhere. Bennett Consulting acquires strategic partnership with 3 major international firms. The same newspapers that once wrote about Ethan Parker's success were now writing about mine. Except this time, I didn't hide. I didn't step behind anyone. I didn't let someone else take credit. For years, I thought humility meant making myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. I was wrong. True confidence meant knowing your worth without needing anyone's permission. The new headquarters opened on a Monday morning. 38 floors. Glass walls. A view of the Chicago skyline. Employees walked through the lobby carrying coffee and laptops. People laughed. Meetings started. Projects moved forward. A company built on honesty. Not appearances. Not borrowed reputation. Not someone else's sacrifice. Mine. For the first time in years, I walked into my own company and felt like I belonged there. Claire. Rachel walked beside me. You know what's funny? I looked at her. What? 3 months ago. You were sitting in my office wondering if you had lost everything. I smiled. I remember. And now, I looked around. At the employees. At the building. At the future. I realized I never lost myself. Rachel smiled. That was always the part Ethan didn't understand. What? He thought you were powerful because of what you gave him. She looked at me. But you were powerful before him. That was the truth. The hardest truth. Ethan never made me successful. He was simply there when I was successful. And somewhere along the way, I confused his presence with his importance. I thought because he stood beside me during my hardest moments, he was the reason I survived them. But I survived because of myself. I built because of myself. I endured because of myself. And when everything fell apart, I was still standing. Meanwhile, Ethan's world continued shrinking. Parker Innovations survived. Barely. The company wasn't destroyed overnight. Real life rarely works that way. But the damage was permanent. Investors left. Several major clients ended their contracts. Employees who once believed in Ethan started questioning his leadership. The company that once represented ambition became a warning. A lesson. A reminder that success built on deception eventually collapses. Vanessa was the first person to leave. Of course she was. I wasn't surprised. Because people reveal their loyalty when things become difficult. Not when everything is beautiful. According to Rachel, Vanessa had moved out of the luxury apartment 2 weeks after the investigation began. She claimed she needed space. But everyone knew the truth. She needed distance. Distance from Ethan. Distance from the scandal. Distance from the consequences. The final conversation between Ethan and Vanessa happened at a restaurant. Someone sent me the details later. Not because I asked. Because when a story collapses publicly, people talk. Everyone wants to know how it ends. Vanessa reportedly looked at Ethan and said, "I gave up everything for you." And Ethan asked, "Did you love me?" She didn't answer. That silence was enough. Because sometimes the answer people avoid is the answer itself. A week later, Ethan called me. I almost didn't answer. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't feel the need. But something made me pick up. "Claire." His voice sounded different. Older. Tired. How are you? I asked. A strange question. Maybe because years ago, I would have asked what was wrong first. Now I asked about him. Not his problems. Him. There was a long silence. I'm learning. I sat quietly. That's good. I should have listened to you. I closed my eyes. There it was. The sentence I waited years to hear. But hearing it now, didn't change anything. Because apologies after consequences often feel different. Not because they are fake. Because they arrive too late. I was wrong about a lot of things. He continued. I thought success was proving I didn't need anyone. A pause. But I forgot the people who helped me get there. I didn't answer. Because there was nothing to say. Some lessons belong to the person who finally learns them. Not the person who suffered while they refused. Claire. Yes. Do you hate me? The question surprised me. Because it was the first honest question Ethan had asked me in a long time. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Then I answered, no. Silence. I don't hate you. Then what do you feel? I looked out the window. The city was moving below me. People walking. Cars passing. Life continuing. I feel like I finally understand you. He was quiet. And I understand that the person I loved was real. A pause. But the person you became was your choice. Neither of us spoke. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from acceptance. Accepting that someone can be important to you, and still not belong in your future. Do you ever miss us? His question was quiet. I thought about it. The old apartment. The late-night conversations. The dreams. The beginning. Yes. I heard him breathe. But not enough to go back. Silence. Why? I smiled sadly. Because I don't miss who we became. A pause. I miss who we were before we forgot how to love each other. That was the last serious conversation I ever had with Ethan Parker. Not because I hated him. Not because I wanted him to suffer. Because some chapters end quietly. Not with anger. Not with revenge. Just acceptance. 1 year later. I stood on the rooftop of Bennett Consulting Group. The city lights reflected in the glass around me. A year ago. I was sitting at the back of a wedding ballroom. Watching someone else celebrate a future built from my past. Tonight, I was standing in a future I created myself. My phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. Congratulations. Forbes wants to interview you. I smiled. A year ago. That would have scared me. I would have worried about what people thought. About whether I deserved it. About whether someone would say I only succeeded because of someone else. But now, I simply replied, set it up. Because the woman who walked into that wedding wasn't the same woman who walked out. The woman who sat at table 29 was waiting for someone to choose her. The woman standing here no longer needed anyone to. And that was the real ending. Not Ethan losing his company. Not Vanessa losing her marriage. Not their perfect wedding becoming a disaster. The real ending was me realizing something I should have known from the beginning. I was never the woman who needed to be chosen. I was the woman who needed to choose herself.